when I started Spiritech with the idea of a karma-free wealth, it was totally different. I was introducing an idea where people not only could employ themselves, but also employ themselves by something that was helping other people. And what I felt like is that actually rewards one on a different level of current, actually on where more of the true current is, because obviously there's the money, but there's also the sheer fact of where when you assist someone and they needed that assistance, they really never forget that. Even if they, try to, they don't forget that, in that time that they were in that scenario, here you came and you gave them something that actually assisted them and helped them. And so to build something off of that, I felt was a great idea, because that to me is how things should be designed in my world, that things should be designed to be symbiotic. Things should be designed to propel the people that are involved in it as far as they can go, and also allow the person who even started the idea to keep developing that idea based on what they see and based on others' input. But of course, when you have those kind of visions, sometimes you don't see the back end. I have a joke about this. It's like when you ask to be the smartest person in the world, you're also asking to be around a bunch of idiots. So you need to understand that there's a two sides to every single thing that you're attempting to do. And you often only see that other side once you accomplish whatever it is you initially set out to accomplish. And now you see the full scope of it. So the full scope for us was that there actually wasn't many brands out there that were willing to even offer us any great commissions on selling their product or producing their product, or actually distributing their product. There was a major difficulty in just the overall back-end functionality of an affiliate network. Like, what is the software? Like, what records how a person's making transactions, or if a person's clicking through in links and making transactions. And there's the integration part. So basically, you wake up to this huge technological nightmare that you find that technology seems to be progressively going in a direction where things are not actually working really well together. And so when you're trying to make one platform with another, then what you end up with is some kind of error that it's not working. And then the company telling you, well, we're working on that functionality, we'll call you later. So we pierced through all that. And that's actually what the last 4 years has really been about, is all of the different scenarios that need to go on, even getting the word out that we even exist, and then seeing, giving commissions, but then also realizing that if we're paying so much for our wholesale cost, then we basically just kissed our profit right out of the window. There is no profit. That profit goes to the affiliate. And but still, we kept going because that's how things start. And I know, because I've dealt with business before, that the ultimate goal is to put yourself into a position to where you're actually producing something. So the reason why we're having this success seminar is because we finally got to that point. We finally got to the point to where we can actually produce something, and we've climbed so many hurdles. And it just, I really want to start broadcasting at least a little bit, as much as I can, because broadcasting also means post-production. That means that once you film something, you also have to put in the timeline, cut stuff off. And that, it takes a lot of time. You're literally like going back and doing the whole thing over again. So what I want to do, though, is I want to start to show people exactly how many things that I'm doing, because I know that there's this huge misconceptions that this may even be somewhat easy. And it's not to make people think that it's so hard. It's just to give a realistic view into what it takes to do something like this, just so that one can get themselves prepped. Because I believe anything that the ropes to, and you can see the ins and outs of, you can actually start to do these things. And as long as you have a good, let's say, mentor or a good example of it being done. And for me, again, like, I'm just a get it done person. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't do it and hold the camera at the same time most of the time. So I'm just going to do it. And what that's kind of not allowed people to see is that, hey, what does it take to actually get to this point? Because Spiritech is different. Spiritech is actually something that does give a person a view into the play-by-play. We've wanted to set up those resources. And so even this conversation that we're having today, the Zoom platform, and figuring out this is the best thing for us, and all those things are a part of it. But each of those steps, it's not just like you make the first step and then that one works, right? It's like we've tried 4 or 5 platforms. We've had different types of meeting. We set out to do different types of things, but all those attempts are actually the most important part, because generally during your first attempt of something that you don't even know about, it's probably not going to work. But then when you pick yourself up again, figure out what didn't work, try it again, maybe that doesn't work either. So there has to be this attitude of resilience, right? And that actually needs to be personally embedded in you. That's what I tell you. It's not something that you can actually look for other people, especially in the beginning, to give you, because actually what they're just going to be doing is like, hey, let me get this. I want this. This is what I want. And, and then it's going to just be you trying to develop to a level to give those people what they want. That's actually called marketing. And so none of this is really foreign. None of this is how things don't go. So if you're not prepared for it, it could literally be like, let's say, for instance, if you come out with this higher level of knowledge and you think that everyone in hearing this knowledge is going to change their lives, and then you go out there and you give it out and you find out that they don't even care what you're talking about, it could either be extremely daunting for you, in most cases it is for most people, or it could be a test for you to see where you're really at. If this is about everyone else, or it's just about you. And fortifying yourself, learning more, being more, becoming a solid foundation for others, and also, of course, staying grounded within yourself, right? So you have more amplification, you'll have more power. So in the beginning, Spiritech, we had to start somewhere. There was lots of misconceptions behind business and how things really worked, even for myself. When I set out to do certain things, I had a big plan. I did have some resources to accomplish those plans. And then I started realizing the conundrum of actually finding others that are completely in sync with where you're at with the plan. And because time is energy, and energy does translate in this world to money, the more time that you're spending attempting to start something and it's already launched, it's literally running this clock of energy, if you may, that's also connected to time. So if for some reason you run out of that, then the whole thing crashes down. So what I've had to do is I've had to run from, pillar to post, as they may call it, launch different things, start different things, like the university and those kind of things, to all keep fueling other ideas that actually hadn't come into life yet, hadn't completely matured yet. They needed that first part of the phase of the manifestation, which is a lot of what our courses are going to teach now, is about those first phases of the manifestation, which is like your manifestation is still in the womb itself. And because life doesn't begin when the baby comes out of the womb, right? Life begins as the baby's in the womb and through the development. And if that baby is not developed properly, then the baby doesn't actually come out properly. So where we like to begin is we like to begin in the womb phase, and we've had to do that ourselves. So the big difference between us is that we're now going to be showing what the womb phase looks like. What were things that we weren't prepared for, and what were the pitfalls, and how did we come up with solutions? One of the big techniques, how to troubleshoot, like that's the big key to this, because you'll even talk sometimes to people who created something and they won't know what happened and what the problem is. And that could be frustrating. You can call someone and say, hey, it's not working, and this is the owners of the company, and they're like, we've never seen that problem before, we don't know what's going on with it. And you're like, huh? And then the even more interesting part is when you actually fix it, because it's like you still need to use it or whatever. So you fix it, and then you're telling them how to fix it. And they're like, thanks, we created it, but we didn't know how to fix that, but you told us how to fix it. You're like, huh? So there's so much that's actually a little bit in disarray out there about how this whole thing works. And sometimes I feel like that's done on purpose. Sometimes I feel like big business and these massive corporations have literally set up this huge pitfall web for people who want to start their own businesses and companies. And that's why we don't see many ingenious applications that actually are benefiting our growth. We see a lot of applications that have ingenious inner workings, but that somehow end up creating us just sending all of our energy, sending all of our time, sending all of our attention into something that's not rewarding us. So now what I feel like embodies Spiritech is we change that. Those that get involved with us begin to receive the full aspects of what it takes to see the best out of themselves on the physical, because Spiritech is not secret energy. They're connected, but secret energy is the part that deals with the spiritual aspects of things. Spiritech is about the physical. It's about how do you make it in this world? How do you thrive? Okay. So moving on, what I wanted to first get into here is I want to talk about first solving your personal riddle. Because what happens is that we can go out and we can try to assist as many people as we want. But if we're confused, if we're still having problems and issues with ourselves, which I call the riddle, then it is going to reflect on what we do. Now, it doesn't mean that you stop helping everyone, but it just says something. It says that, if you find yourself to be a complete roller coaster most of the time, then you would need to know that whatever you intend to do is going to reflect that roller coaster in you. So it is best to get that whole part straightened out first. I call that the personal riddle. 7 years ago in my life, I went on the advent of solving my personal riddle. And this is all of what was created after that riddle was solved. So I spent, let's say, 20 or 31 years, if you're counting from the time I came in the world, I spent 31 years not knowing truly what I was, who I was, where I was. And then finally, it doesn't even matter. That's the highest level of it. You are, all right? It just is. And through that process, like I said, this last segment has been actually solving that personal riddle. So solving that personal riddle put me into a position where I can start to work on the collective riddle, right? And what I mean by that is that now that I have my riddle solved, it now started letting me look to the person or the beings that were adjacent to me, immediate family members, friends, colleagues, whatever, and start saying, well, what's the collective riddle? Not what is that person's riddle. Remember, each person can only solve their own riddle, okay? So when you look at the collective, that appears as everyone added together. So you can look at the collective riddle and say, so, the collective riddle. What's going on with the collective riddle? And here's some things that I noticed right off. First of all, we didn't have a bank, okay? Well, first of all, we didn't have sovereignty. Let me just put it that way. Sovereignty, of course, is that you have the ability to produce all your powers without the need of anyone else. So you have your water, you have your electricity, you even have access to food. And then if, there's money in the dimension, so you have this infinite supply of money going on from something that you've created that is residually taking care of you. So how many people do you know that are actually in that position? I should do a poll about that. And I'm sure out of 20 people, maybe one, maybe a half, somebody that's almost there. Because even sometimes when people get very wealthy, they don't actually go and right away start getting their grid together and supplying their own power and then figure out where their wells are. And they don't go into doing that. They actually start buying more houses in different places to stay that look nice. And right. So because they feel like, well, the money is going to always keep me wealthy. But sovereignty has a specific definition, and it's basically the ability to supply your own power. So I didn't meet really too many sovereigns just overall. And so that's in the collective. So that was the first thing. As I said, man, there's nobody that really has himself completely sustained. And then the next thing was, of course, is that when I say a collective, let's say collective conscious, which means a group of people that are actually conscious, because now that's what we would be more honing in on when I'm talking about the collective riddle, right? Not the world riddle. Talk about the collective riddle, the people who think similar to the way that I think, right? And in that collective, I found that conscious people, quote unquote, had no source for resources, that they didn't even have their own bank. Which forced them all the time to keep going right back into the things that annoy them the most, the things that they don't believe in the most, to transact and to sustain themselves, right? And when I looked into, well, why is that? I came right back to the first part of this conversation, that it's very difficult to actually start a business. You need resources. You need people who believe in you. You also have to have a lot of charisma. You have to be able to troubleshoot. You have to be, you have to have some kind of some intellect, something going on, right? That's what this whole thing demands. Now, all those things actually could be taught. All those things a person could learn how to do if they don't, if someone is willing to teach them. And I also found in the collective that we were a bit low on that too, that there were a lot of people that were looking to justify just the damage that they had taken and they experienced by telling others about what was creating that damage. And I was in that club too, meaning that, we can always highlight who is not working with the overall collective of the world getting to a greater level, right? There will always be somebody dragging it down. So because in the victim stage, you're always looking for something to blame, then you can often find that you just highlighting who to blame somehow equates to you as teaching. But teaching is actually coming up with the solutions for repairing and rectifying the things that have occurred due to whatever it is that you want to blame. So it's an entirely different position. So I did find it, the world a little bit low on people who also, or the collective a little bit low on people who also knew the ropes of both worlds. Now you had some brilliant spiritual people, but then when you tried to see if, how does that connect also with what I'm supposed to do in daily life? And even I used to have to ask myself that question all the time. That's why I created Spiritech. I said, it's great to give everyone this information and things, but if they have to keep going back into, the mess all the time, then, we got to do something about that. But then, of course, the optimist, or the one who is the innovator or the pioneer, has a lot of thoughts. And this is actually, specific traits of certain zodiacs. People are like this. They just have all these ideas. But then there's the maturity of that, or of that sign, like actually completing what that life path says needs to be complete, which is you need to now learn how to focus on one thing until you get that done, and then move to the next thing. And also learn how to prioritize which one of those needs to be done in order for the other one to even be realistic to happen, right? So there's that whole lesson. So how I see this now is that now Spiritech is at 900 plus affiliates. That is the perfect number for us to begin to explode. Like, it's actually happening on different levels, like the invent of Phi Aqua and advent of Phi Aqua and the resonators and all those kind of things. So that shows me on another level that it does connect to this time, but also because of the amount of spirit techs that are actually participating now, it also connects in with how we can make this thing happen, because we have that, someone would say 6, I say 3 degrees of separation to connect us into everything, meaning that as people adapt to this more and realize what's going on, their presence and their involvement in it connects us and connects them, etc. And it just keeps growing and growing. And you just need like a certain amount to begin to do that. If you try to do that with one person, it's like, you 2 people, three people. It's kind of like how I seen the resistance grow. It was like 40 people and we were excited. Yeah, there's 40 people on the site. And then eventually that became 300 and we were like, man, this is crazy. We're big now. And then now, of course, it's around 18,000. And then also all the impressions around the internet. But each of those phases were necessary. And of course, when you turn on the lights in the site the first day, 18,000 people didn't just pop up there. Just like when we turn on the lights in Spiritech the first day, just in going with this effort, like 900 people didn't pop up. But now that we have 900 people, it's now time to unfold what I believe is a perfect solution for the scenario that we're experiencing right now. And some of the things that I highlighted that we didn't have, and that has to go in somewhat of a sequence. But those solutions are: 1, now that we have placed ourselves in the position of manufacturing, we begin a brand new template to exactly how companies work. Just like open source started a whole new template about how things should be done, we're going to do that same thing. We're going to say, well, honestly, when you look at the top of the pyramid in most companies, the people that are up there, if they even delegated 15% of what they're making to the rest of the people involved in their organization, all those people would be in the 6-figure salaries because of just how much those corporations make. So it's a simple gesture. It's just saying that if we took more capital from the top and flushed it into what the people that were coming in and motivating them to create and do things more because they have now capital to do that with, then you would get more like a parallel growth. You would get a spreading rather than this vertical growth that basically ends in this capstone of this one person reaching success. It's like, I find that a lot of the books that are written about success seem to be just about the person achieving success because they got you to write the book. It's like, well, shoot, I read the book, I paid the guy $24. I didn't really, get to success, but I'm sure that they did, right? And it's now looking at it's like, okay, so how much can you really do to bring a person into success? And what do you really need to look at, and what do you really need to pay attention to? And so these would be things like marketing, matrix mechanics, all those different kind of things, which we're going to talk about in a moment, and how we're going to assist people with getting that knowledge and information so they can keep on expanding. But where we're at right now is we're simply talking about Spiritech becoming the manufacturing arm of this affiliate program, if you may, or the specialist program as we call it. And then our commissions going to a certain rate on those products that we produce. And then that allows a person to actually make an income that really they can start to supplement the income that they're already making, and then get to a point where they remove it altogether, right? And then the next phase is, and this is a projection. This is how I project. I project things in stages. The next projection is then when Spiritech gets solid with its manufacturing and its production, which it will, then it switches over the monetary system that we're generally on, which I guess is US greenbacks or whatever country you're in, and begins to develop its own cryptocurrency to where its products actually back the worth of its currency. And that as our manufacturing begins to grow, because we will have those facilities, then we begin to directly place people in those facilities to not only learn how to, create things themselves, but also as a way and a means of making income. And then this begins to build a system of financial support. So that way, when we have other endeavors that are strictly humanitarian, because some people, just think all the time, and this is a lot of big misconceptions, like a lot of conscious people believe that consciousness should never have anything to do with money, right? And this is just another one of the slavery mind jobs that they put everyone through. And they always say, it's like spirituality has nothing to do with money. And even I was under those conceptions, and those conceptions come directly, generally from the Bible. The turning over of the money tables and all that. And it's those kinds of golden calves, which is what we call them, or that anchor in the person's mind. And then when they supposedly get conscious, then they're like, I don't want to have anything to do with the money thing anymore. But then when they have this grand vision and idea, they don't have the finances to make it happen. And then when they go and ask someone else that has those finances, hey, can I borrow this money so I can get this happening? The only way that person has finances is because they were very successful in business. So the first thing that they're going to ask you is, so how am I going to get paid back? And the person says, well, it's not about that. It's about a humanitarian effort. So then most of the time what actually happens is not that those people don't want to give to humanitarian effort. They just feel like they have a better idea of a humanitarian effort than you do. And they would rather just spend their money in doing that, like giving to Red Cross and Red Shield, which no one ever sees the money, giving to this charity, etc. Right? So this is the cycle. So where this ends up is the people who have these brilliant ideas about things that could be implemented into our reality to really begin to boost the consciousness, the intellect, and the intelligence for the children, the adults, etc. No capital. And because they don't believe they should have any money, that's a personal projection that they've sent out, and then now they're stuck. Then they get frustrated because while they may have had some success spiritually, there is no fulfillment. Fulfillment is mental, physical, spiritual, solve the riddle. Now I'm straight. I can really move on from here if necessary, but I don't feel the big stress and tension sometimes related to time and gravity that goes on for everybody else because I already got the t-shirt. So I've already been fulfilled. So we want to bring people into the level of fulfillment. And the first part of that is to close that gap of the misconceptions about why you need resources, okay? And we'll say it just like this. It's almost like a mantra to yourself. When your mind starts to think that you don't need financial currency, you don't need resources, immediately just send the message back in, but we need to be sovereign, because you'll find that the mind can't argue against that. It can't say, well, no, we need to be here and working at this place, and that's where we're supposed to be in life. Now, if that's going on, then there's a bigger problem than you think. The truth is that all you have to do is keep telling yourself that it's not the principles of what others are doing with their money in Vegas and all that kind of stuff, which is all the time when we see money, we see, all the dark sides of it, right? But the truth is that the only thing that we need to see is our sovereignty. And then once you see just your sovereignty as the means to the end, if you may, or the reason why you're doing what you're doing, then things start to click. You're able to actually restore that power that you used to have. Some actually may have never had it because they may have never been trained to do, to get sales or to sell something, right? Like the whole world is now in throes with, if someone doesn't like what you're presenting, whether it's yourself, whether it's your book, even if it's knowledge, whatever it is, they don't like what you're presenting because you don't know how to present it, then you don't get to the next stage of where you want to go. So a big part of this is about instilling yourself first with that internal confidence that is coming off you as a frequency where you're not sending mixed signals. So that way, when you come to someone about something or you create something, it doesn't have those mixed signals inside of it. It has this signal of sovereignty. And then because that resonates with so many people, and that's why Spiritech is really open, because even someone else that resonates with that idea of sovereignty immediately sees, they may get what you have and say, oh, okay, yeah, I need those products. I need to help myself clean my blood. But here's something else that I can also get involved in to start to get on my path to sovereignty. You see, so this is opening up a way, because that way is not really there. Like I'm looking at the big names. I'm looking at Mind Valley. I'm looking at integrative nutrition. I've even reached out to many of these people, and man, one email back was like, we'll review who you are in a nutshell, see how much money you have, see if you're valuable to us. And if that's the case, then we'll call you in for an interview. And then if you're accepted, then you're going to have to pay $3,000. So it's like, a walled garden before you can get into, what, they're even talking about and they're trying to present. Yet the marketing is presented as, hey, this is an outlet for everyone to manifest and to get onto a higher level of the consciousness. You see? So this is what's happening. So the first thing that we're going to go into, because again, this is about an hour and a half meeting today, is we're going to take that sneak peek look at Phi Aqua, which many people are waiting on. And to do that, I'm going to do a share screen here. 1 second. And there we are. All right.